are you, Ginger?
Doing great, Monica. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So glad to have you here today as we do this final session of the Reactor Learn Together series when it comes to SQL database in Fabric. I'm excited to introduce this topic. It happens to be one of the topics that I have been avoiding for the past, blah, blah, blah months. I'm not quite sure the whole Fabric world is to my liking yet because I'm a diehard DBA. So we're going to talk about that shortly and how we're going to approach this one. Just an introduction for those who don't know me, I'm Monica Rathbun, a Microsoft MVP for 7 or 8 years now, diehard engine performance girl. When it comes to BI and analysis, is not necessarily my thing, but to help me along that road, we have Ginger Grant. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, Monica, it's great to be doing this with you. I'm Ginger Grant. I'm also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP for 9 years. I could count the circles, but I'm not going to bother. I've been doing a lot with Fabric. Unlike Monica, I am left the DBA world behind, and I do a lot with Fabric and Power BI. So I think this is going to be a really great session because we'll be able to get our different perspectives from a Fabric perspective, which is my wheelhouse, versus how you tend to look at the world from that performance DBA aspect, which I think a lot of people is really going to find helpful with this.
I think so too. Let's go ahead and get started with this. We've got some of the intro slides that we need to go through, and then we can really dive into what matters with the content.
Yep.
As you know,
this is interactive.
Yep, it's going to be interactive, and that's going to be interactive for me too, because as Ginger is teaching all of us, I'm going to be going right along with her. So I may have some questions for her. We're going to keep it interactive, and I'm going to learn as you learn. So definitely jump in with questions whenever.
Yeah, and we have experts from Microsoft that are going to be answering all the questions we have during the session. So feel free to chat away. And if there's any that we don't get to for whatever reason, they'll be posted. So don't feel like you should not do that. So as Monica said, this is the last session. Lots of great content. If you've missed it, go back and take a look at it. I know you looked at the first one, Monica.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I think I watched the first one. I watched the one on using AI. And then I caught the one from Joey and Andrew on the GraphQL one. That one was really good. I actually learned some stuff about Fabric. So I was impressed I could understand it. So, that gives me a little bit of hope that the SQL database in Fabric is going to work out for me. But all of these are actually already streamed live and they're recorded. So you can go back and watch these at any point in time and pick up what you can. I'm really glad that we're the last one. So everybody else got to go through it all first and see how this all works. So yeah.
Yeah, this is some great content, especially because yesterday, Heidi and Hamish, I know, talked about application lifecycle management, and they just came out with a blog on how to do CI/CD inside of Fabric. So for SQL databases, so you couldn't get more timely than this content, which is really, really cool.
Right. Cutting edge and bleeding edge. We're learning it together, so it's awesome. I like it.
Hope to see you. I'm pretty sure you're probably going to be going to FabCon in Vegas again, Monica. And remember seeing you there last year.
I hope so. I did do the FabCon in Europe, which I was very happy. I was surprised. Everything you're hearing is about Fabric, right? So this is FabCon. You would expect it is all analytical BI kind of content, but they actually had a database track, like a diehard database track that really allowed us to bridge the gap between what Fabric is and what the database is and how it's all still relevant to what we do. So I think for anybody going out to this conference is very useful. I'm glad it's in the US. Everybody loves Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to, I hope, going back out there and learning some more about Fabric.
Well, I'll definitely be attending, hopefully presenting, though we don't know any of that yet. But take advantage of the fact that if you do want to attend, and it's a wonderful experience for networking and learning. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's going to be new product announcements because there always are at events like this. And if you do it now, hey, there's a discount code. So take advantage of that.
$150, man. That's always good.
Always good. So let's get started into looking at what we are doing with Fabric in SQLDB.
All right, so here's where it gets interesting. Like I said, not our DBA. I do performance tuning. So I really want to get into the meat of how Fabric is working, how I can performance tune that, how I can find all the wonderful metrics that I'm used to getting inside this offering. Understanding, and I'm pretty clear on this one, that it is just Azure SQL DB, right? So I have my comfort zone of my Azure SQL database. It should be nothing scary, but as soon as you add the word Fabric to it, I feel like I'm out of my element. This piece right here, I'm glad that I start to see a little bit of the things I'm used to, right? I can look at database size. That's going to matter here. There's some auto scaling. I hear about this. I'd like to learn a little bit more. Alerts. Anytime you're doing any kind of performance tuning, alerts are important. So I like that piece is already there because we all need to have something actionable. Identifying queries. I like this piece. It's something I'm comfortable with. We're going to see how it relates from the DBA perspective. Now, one thing we have to actually keep in mind, and I'm going to be thinking about it the whole time, this was designed for developers. This is designed for an analyst. This is designed for a Fabric architect, such as you, Ginger, that you're used to having things more minimalized, right? You're worried about the data. You want to get all the information out of the data. So are these pieces still important to you as they are to me? Do you care?
Yes and no. I mean, one of the things this is following the Fabric installation where it's knob free, which means that I know you're used to doing a lot of like picking different things, and where you don't get to pick so much with this. So there's not a whole lot of off buttons. Everything is like you turn it on and you get it, which I know has advantages and disadvantages. And today we're going to be looking at how to figure out what it's doing inside. Because since you don't have options for how big it is, different priorities, this is where today we're going to be looking at how do I see what's going on, which is really important.
Right. And I understand that they're going to be taking care of a lot of this stuff blindly in the back end, right? They're going to be taking care of a lot of the auto indexing and tuning and any kind of modifications or knobs and switches that have to be done to optimize things that I'm used to doing. They're doing it blindly, is from what I understand, but we'll learn about that. We'll see how this goes.
It is in preview. So if you don't like the auto indexing today, there's a good chance that this may not be exactly how it's done in GA, since they're going to be using this time period to improve the product, which is what they do with these before it goes GA. There's some tweaks that are going to happen. And a lot of the stuff is probably going to be performance related, I would expect, but we don't know that yet. So like this is what we were talking about before, knob free. So looking at, how to see how things are doing. So we just are going to be looking to see how well that works.
Yeah. So these, with any performance tuning thing, right? These actually cover anything that you're going to need to identify your workload issues. As we start to get to look at capacity that's being taken by the database and all the data that's being manipulated inside the database or ingested, and how that's going to relate to the work that you're doing in Fabric now, this is going to give us an idea of we can find where our big consumers are, right? It gives you the purview to look at your queries, to figure out if you can reduce the IO that may be happening. You can track things, which I love. Everybody wants to trend and track and follow up and actually prove your improvements. That's one of the best things about performance tuning, right? You can make a change and you can prove your improvements. How do they do that? Query Store is part of this, and it is on by default, which I'm very excited. So I get that familiarity in here. And this whole thing, if you know me, Ginger, I am not a huge fan of things like Data Tuning Advisor or automatic indexes and things like that. I want to be able to do that. But I hear they've designed this specifically for the developers and the Fabric community to better handle those indexes. So I'm waiting to see how those go.
Yes. I mean, over time, this is such a new product. I don't think that anybody has enough experience with how it uses to say how it's working in a production environment, because there's so much testing going. People are just starting with this and providing feedback as to how to make things better. The one thing that I wanted to mention when we're today, we're looking a lot at how you're going to do performance tuning with your database. So we're looking at capacity of your database. What I am interested in from a Fabric perspective, that isn't going to be what we're going to be showing you today, is how this component fits in with the overall capacity measurement of your Fabric environment, because this is a kind of a silo of just SQL DB performance, not looking at anything else you're doing in Fabric.
That's a good point. So as a DBA here, how can I see how my database is interacting with your entire Fabric ecosystem? Is there a way yet for me to see that?
Well, you can look at the Fabric Capacity app to see how it interacts as part of the whole. Okay. And then when you're looking to see how CPU is going, you're going to, for how here we're drilling down to everything database, but there is a larger window, because if you've got like a Spark job that's running out of capacity, it's using all the CPUs, that's going to impact your database. I mean, it can't not.
Now, I also understand that this is going to be database centric. So all of this monitoring is not like on my big giant fleet wide where I can see all of my databases. This is just going to be this particular data. What's the word for it? Is it a one lake? What exactly is the word?
It is in one lake, but it is a SQL DB within one lake. So yes, it's going to be using one lake storage. So same storage as you're using, and it's going to be very similar to how mirroring has been implemented from a from a Fabric perspective. So your data will be in one lake, but a little bit different. Right. So let's take a look at kind of looking at what kind of alerts we can get.
Okay.
So looking at alerts, how do these kinds of things compare to what you're seeing, Monica? Because we're seeing that we'll get a notification for blocking queries, CPU usage, and allocated sizes. Is this something that you do when you're performance tuning databases?
Of course. So I like this. You know, blocking is always a big issue for DBAs, right? I'm not sure how many, I'm sure developers have gotten word that said, hey, whatever you just wrote just took down the system. It's blocking everybody. So blocking's familiar, right? Nothing else can be run. I've got a statement that's preventing other statements from running at the same time. That still applies. I like that we're tracking that already. As we get into the DBA side, I remember, again, it is Azure SQL database. So things like RCSI, which we won't talk about, my data engine mind going here is going to help with some of this stuff, but they're bringing it to the forefront. And I don't think you need to know a ton on the database side. You just need to know, hey, what's the query that's causing issues? And then go and tackle that query, right? So they give you view, CPU usage. Everybody has the CPU usage. That's, you know, that's always the big bet there. No matter if it's database or network or whatever, everybody's, you know, looking at CPU usage. Talk to me about the allocated size. What exactly are they giving me here?
Yeah, so if allocated size is basically how big that you think that the database should be. So if it's greater than 80% of allocated size, you're going to need to like change that knob so that you can allocate more resources to it. And again, this gets into your entire Fabric resources, because you know you can't allocate into infinity. There's licensing involved for increasing in allocated size. So you might want to look at that to say, okay, overall, am I exceeding my capacity in my Fabric instance?
Now I hear there's some auto scaling involved in this. Is that where this is going to play the part?
It's going to, but if it will auto scale, but if you have a limits to how much your auto scaling can do, and then you might need to look at additional licensing.
Okay, so that's still all pertinent to the DBA, right? Yep, I'm still with you. Let's see where else you're going to use me.
Yeah. So you have to look at how you have how you have allocated the resources that you have. Okay. So, and to see whether or not, again, more licensing is required. You can go over. You just can't go over for greater than 80% of your allocated size. So, if you've, I mean, think about that. It's saying 80%, so just short of double what you've said you wanted. Mm-hmm. You can do that for 5 minutes,
and it's going to alert you.
It's going to alert you, but it's going to let you do it. Right. It's going to let you do it too.
Right.
So
money could be involved. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you can go over and have everything not crash on you, but it'll say, wait a minute, you can't do this in perpetuity.
All right. So I know when it comes to databases, I like to have some control over the alerts. Where am I able to tweak these? How is it telling me? And can I send email alerts or something that's going to actually really get me my interest piqued that there might be an issue?
And you can send the alerts that you know that they have happened, but what is really great is that the alerts will be recorded and show up even if you have no notification. So
Okay.
anybody using Fabric, and we'll take a look at this here in the recorded demo that we're going to be looking at, you'll see, hey, there's something going on here. And you'll see that there will be an orange bar that says you have alerts. So you can go in and see them. And also, if you look at the performance monitor tab, if there is an alert, instantly you'll see that little red bell up there, so that even people who may not be notified be like, oh, I've got something going on. And you can always look back different time frames to see how you have an alert now. If I didn't get it, is it still happening because I got that 10 minutes ago? And take a look at what's going on in real time, and
You
not have to
answered
go
my
up to
question,
DMVs to
Ginger.
do that.
You
What?
answered my question before I even got a chance to get it out. I was going to ask, can I go historically back? Because I want to trend it. I want to see, did I have this last Tuesday, the same exact alert happen? Did it happen, every morning at 8 o'clock? All of this seems to be available, just like it would be, again, in Azure SQL database. It's the same thing, right? So they are giving you the historical view. Can somebody go out and clear those out? Do we know that yet? I don't want anybody to clear my alerts so I can keep that.
They do not get cleared.
Hey, I like it.
And the performance monitor is doing this in all, of course, graphic way of doing it. So we'll be able to see how it's working. But if you want to run the same DMVs you ran before, it's not like anybody's taking them away.
That's right. We're going to get to more of that. I love the fact that we can get into some of the real meat of DMVs and everything and what's causing these alerts. But we're going to get to that in a little bit.
Right. So we've talked about it. Let's actually take a look at my performance dashboard. And like I mentioned, since this is such a new product, Microsoft went and recorded some demos for us, which is great because they made the alerts happen. And it's not always easy to fake the fact that your database is performing badly. So here we can see that, yes, I have an alert. Notice I've got two indicators here. I've got this bell, and then I've got this, your Fabric database performance is critical and needs your attention. And I'm not seeing this just in some random place. I'm inside of my SQL database. And I can tell that because it says that over here. So anybody using the SQL database will know, hey, something's going on. So they don't have to go get an alert or hide it. Either of these two ways will let you know, hey, you've got something going on that you need to do. So even a casual user of the SQL database will know that, yeah, there's something going on. So if they're not the right person, they can tell the right person, hey, go look at your email, or let's investigate this alert, so that there's no waiting around to see that something's going on. So
now, does this view, because I haven't been into Fabric, I'll be honest, is this view normal for everybody, or is this something that they need to get used to? This just falls in line with everything else.
If you open up the database, you'll see that.
Okay.
This particular view. But we're moving on now into looking at the alerts that we got. And we can see the reason we have that red bell is we've got my CPU consumption is high. And block queries, it's currently normal, but it's kind of giving us a warning there. And we can see a bunch of different elements that just we can monitor just all the time. Yeah. And CPU consumption, user connections, requests per second, allocated size, and queries too.
That's really cool. It's got the spike on the side. You can see the graph as you're going down.
Right. And of course we can drill into all of it. And it's like, at the bottom, we're kind of scrolling down. It shows you when automatic indexes are being deployed. But any of these events we can drill into, because every single one of them you see over there on the right-hand side, it says view more. So we can always take a look at any of these, even if there isn't an alert present, to find out more information about any of these things. And we're going to be taking a look at that. But let's take a look at the error that we have. So clicking on that icon there, we're going into the performance dashboard, and we're seeing our CPU consumption. And ta-da, looky, we have red dots. And the red dots are telling us that we have a problem. So we want to go ahead and investigate that. Let's stop this for now, and we'll move on to more investigation before we get into that. So let's talk a little bit about why we might have those kind of problems.
Now, that's a good start. I think that is a good preview, right? You showed us where the alerts are. My database mind and performance mind is now working. I'm starting to understand a little bit of this Fabric thing and how I'm going to play a role. Gave me some alerts, and I see some spikes. So now we're talking my language, right? We're in my territory. CPU consumption. It's telling us, how much CPU are we taking during that interval of time. It's going to tell us if we can actually fine tune that. So I think if you double click into there, it'll get you a more granular view. It is using some of the query store behind there, so I'm familiar with that, which means I probably can get to more information about this CPU consumption. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. The biggest thing for me is tuning my queries, understanding that they are going to mess with all the knobs. I'm not going to be doing as much twisting and turning as I normally do. So I'm really going to be focusing my view as a developer, which is going to be very different mindset for me, because I want to dig in and really do the engine piece. But this isn't for me. This is a big reminder. This is not for me. It is really, really, really driven to give a developer analyst a tool that they can make some insights about their code and maybe rewrite something. That's something important that I got to keep in mind. I don't know about you, Ginger, but I just want to dive into the meat and potatoes of this. And I got to change my mind. Developer.
Yeah, but generally speaking, whoops, back that one up a bit, is the reason that if you're not tuning knobs, you probably need to fix a query. Because
it always goes back to the query. You always want to, tune the knobs to make things work a little bit better, but you always go back to root cause. So here they take that middle piece out, they push you straight to root cause, right? So you're actually getting there, and the developers and everybody else who's writing this is actually going to go and tune it straight off the bat, right? And they're just giving you what you need to identify where your problems are. Cut and dry.
Yeah,
I think it's good.
And keep in mind, just because it's Azure SQL DB, if you want to look at all this in Management Studio, because that's your tool of choice, you can open up a Fabric SQL DB inside of Management Studio or Azure Data Tools. If you want to dive into your queries there, you certainly can.
Right.
So
I like that. So I'm not just stuck in the Fabric ecosystem where I'm not quite used to that interface yet. I can go directly like any other Azure SQL database.
Right.
So that's great.
Because we're looking at the query details, and then where is that coming from? Query store.
Query store, right? So within Query Store, we get the number of executions. We see different time intervals. We're able to see those wonderful graphs. We're able to get into things like execution plans and dive into the normal tuning that I love, right? Hopefully, I don't know about you, Ginger, but I don't think there is enough developers that are actually looking at execution plans and tuning based on what they're seeing. So I'm kind of really excited that Query Store is part of this. That means I can still connect, like you said, Management Studio, Visual Studio Code, and I think you can do ADS, right? Azure Data Studio. Yeah. It's all there, regardless of which tool you're looking at. I can get into the same things for myself. Now, do you have a lot of developers that even know what execution plans are? Because I'm hoping now they might dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah, but I mean, they may not know execution plans, but they know red dot says my query is bad. Gotta go fix.
Hey, and that's one great thing about Query Store too, right? You get the red dots, you get the big tall bars that tell you this is your big consumer, and then you actually get the text for what the problem is. So it's all going to be here for all of us, and we can actually track frequency of how often it's getting executed and where my bottlenecks are. And yeah, I think it's really going to give us a great view for them to start with, right? A view from the developers.
Because we have all this great information, like, CPU, longest running, most frequent, and high read. And so maybe people can use this information to teach themselves over time, because they don't have to necessarily run Query Store. They can just look at the performance monitor, and that information's always there in that pane. So you can look at it when there's no alert to see things look good, what's running. We can dive into more of that.
That's a good point, because a lot of people don't necessarily get access to those external tools like SSMS and stuff. They can still do all of this inside the browser, inside the Fabric one ecosystem, one lake platform. I don't know what the terminology for that one is either, but they can get it all right there. So there's nothing special, no new tools you have to learn. It's just a matter of right?
You bring up a great point, because I recently had a Fabric client that was experiencing some performance issues, and it was very difficult for me to get access to the Fabric Capacity app, which is where I would go and troubleshoot this sort of things. And this is something the DBA doesn't have to worry about, because anybody using the database, performance dashboard information is given to them, unless I only have read. Unless they have the view only access. So this is information everybody can see.
So I like the list for here. I know this is a new product. I like that they've started out with these top 4. These are going to be the biggest way to find your issues, right? These are the ones I'm going to go to as a DBA. So I like that they've started with this. I'm looking forward to seeing where else they bring in here. knowing that they're keeping it a little tighter ball here because we want to make sure it is developer-centric. But I find out that I am, because it's still Azure SQL Database, I have a right to all of my DMVs. So I can get down to the nitty gritty and query some things out of the DMVs, use my existing scripts. If I have existing scripts for Query Store, existing scripts for DMVs as a DBA, and you're tasked to jump in and start to do something with this Fabric database, that I can actually use what I'm used to, and I don't have to rewrite my scripts. I like that.
It's all running T-SQL, so all the scripts that you have as DBA will work great.
Yep.
So, but you can see a lot of the stuff, sorted a little bit differently, just within the dashboard, just to help you better identify, hey, which one do I need to go after? And you can star things if you want to monitor a query over time. You can give that one special love so that you can track specific queries and keep an eye on them as well.
I like that. So if you ever walk into my office, I'm in Query Store all the time. I always have a piece of paper and it has thousands of numbers on it. What are those numbers? It's query IDs. And then so this tracking piece, I always write down, okay, I messed with this query. Here was the query ID. I want to go back and check and see what the trend was over time. They actually have the same query IDs inside this environment because it's Query Store, right? Yeah. So now they make it easy. Instead of actually going and writing down all of these numbers, I can put a little star on it, and I'll show you in the demo, to where it just brings it to the top of the list. And as a developer myself in my environment, I can see the ones that I care about, and really kind of dive into those as we see it. So that's pretty cool. I like that feature. Yeah,
well, let's take a look at that. Let's show us that part of the demo.
Okay, so this is going to be interesting, everybody. I am sitting here on a littler screen while she's sharing it, but this is where we left off with Ginger. You can see those spikes from those wonderful alerts that we got earlier. These are the high CPU queries that are running at this point in time. When you highlight over those, you will actually see more granular information on that. And you can look at the time interval. We're going to be able to drill into things. And you'll see during that all of the query information that you could possibly want, right? So it has all the query ID, like I talked about. The Fabric experience makes it very, very easy for you to just drill into the time period that you care about, right? We care about the red dots. Everything else looks nice. We care about the red dots. Now we want to know what was causing the red dots. So it is giving you a very, very easy interface for you to go through. Look at your trend lines. You can go and see that your scale will change based on the interval that you want to actually see. It actually gives you a really easy view that allows you to bridge the gap, like I said, between somebody who is a diehard DBA and somebody who just needs to figure out what's going on, right? And then, like I said, as a developer, look at you, she's right here going and hit that little star. She clicks on that star, and then it actually will put that one at the top of the screen. You see that right there? It's going to hold steady. So every time I go and look at this, I can focus on that one, and I don't have to write down that query ID, right? And then I'm going to go and drill in like I normally would. I want to drill in and look at the pattern of that, that query itself, look at the actual code involved in it. I can highlight that. I can bring that into all kinds of different tools, such as SSMS, etc. I can actually go in and compare time intervals. We'll see this. Cool. That lovely little arch we're seeing is the pattern of usage right here for this particular query ID, that 2757 ID. Now, if I want to compare that to any other time interval, I can do that. I can say, hey, this is over the last, day, last 24 hours. And then maybe I want to see how it's doing over the last hour because I made some kind of change. So now if I implemented code change or something, I can go and see and look, hey, we might be trending a little better. It looks like whatever I did made a difference. So the 24 hours over an hour, I like that. The interface is pretty easy. Those who, get compensated by the things that you do good, we all do, screenshot this. You can show your improvement, right? That's one of the great stories of things about Query Store. You can see the differences in the environment. Like it's showing, you can go and take that query code, go straight into SSMS or what have you, and run the code. Get to your execution plans, get and figure out where your bottleneck is. Then you can dive deeper into other reports. This was just CPU, but they have the same kind of Query Store reports, right? You've got the high CPU usage, long running queries. You've got requests per second. That matters if you've got something like, a bot attack or something going on, or somebody has a loop in their code and that loop is running over and over again. You can look at all of that information. Blocked queries and the high I can't read that one from there, but we
Read.
have, yeah, high reads. High reads is a good one. What is pulling in all the data? Are you reading too much? Can you refine your code? All of that is in here. Very, very simple, very useful. I think it's going to be something easily adaptable. For most, I think it's going to be developer friendly. I think they did a good job in bringing in not only the tuning experts, but making developers into tuning experts pretty easily. I think it's going to be pretty lightweight. And I think it's going to be an easy, quick identifying tool. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they grow. Again, remembering that this is new, right? We're going to see, a lot of evolution with this as we go through. But the performance dashboard, it's a great start. It will get me what I want, remembering that this is just centric to this one database. Right?
Yep. Well, we've got more of it that we definitely want to take a look at. So let's talk about some of the other items that are available and take a look at user connections, which is a big deal if you're talking about databases, knowing how many people are using it, what kind of connections are going on. But sometimes this can be misleading, Monica. Can you, with stuff that you do, can you say why user connections may not be what you think?
Well, it's so quick. It kind of just depends, right? I kind of alluded to it. User connections, how many people are running, whatever it is you're doing inside of Fabric. I don't know a ton about Fabric. You guys know this. Whatever they're connecting in, running reports, you have something, Power BI things going in, users, how many users are reading it. But we're bringing in databases now. So what is the user connection? Is there an API that's calling? Is there some kind of code that's calling? What application is calling? Is there a problem in the application where it's giving you tons of connections, right? This is where we've got to figure out, we are on a database. Knowing how many sessions are going on, how many user connections are important. And I think they do a pretty good job of bringing this forward. Is it something you would be interested in, Ginger?
Well, yeah, because thinking about like applications, because I know that like you can have some applications, the ones that I've worked with, you've got one user that's used to access the database, but if there's like, you could have 1,500 different connections with one user. So knowing who the user is, I know people think user connections are like, oh, well, I can see that, Bob is running a query. No, it's much bigger than that because it's the connections.
Right.
And the same user can be hogging up a lot of space, just given how the application that's using this might be written.
Exactly. Now you brought the database into Fabric. So now the developers and everyone and the application owners really need to understand how their connections are working.
Absolutely. It's really going to provide that insight.
Mm-hmm.
But requests per insights are also, requests per seconds are really helpful too, because this is basically how much is being used. So it's looking at what kind of usage you have over your database, who's accessing it, how much, what tables, what queries. I really hope that the tables that with executed queries that the query plans, since they're automatically created, will be tuned based on this information we see here.
Right. So this is the big thing too, right? How often are you executing queries? Are you executing it every second, every 10 seconds for some reason? Do you really need to do that? This is how you can easily figure out, can we pull this once, every 10 minutes versus every second or what have you? This will show you the sheer amount that might happen during a peak time, maybe. Just like any other database, you could see where your peaks are.
Yeah, I think if you had an application, this would be really helpful to see what's going on. Because people sometimes lose track of the threads that are happening in an app as to the impact that has on a database.
Yep, it's a database, right? It's still a database.
Yep.
It's still a database. And like I alluded to earlier, databases have blocking, and you got to make sure the transactions are available and can run, and you don't want to block everything. And then when you get that little spinning wheel where nothing is working and you're trying to figure out why your application is not working and you're getting timeouts, it's possible that somebody could be blocking with some code and cause some issues. We've all run into an app where you're sitting there and you've been waiting in line for, I don't know, tickets or something. And all of a sudden you get a timeout. And it's like, oh, come to find out, maybe there's something going on the database side. Blocking is a big thing. I love this little hint down here at the bottom, Ginger.
My favorite.
I like that this is on here. If you look at that developer insight, you're going to figure out how to rewrite and break up your queries to prevent this type of blocking. But note this little note here. I love it. It says,
no lock
is not the answer.
I know. I've seen so much of that. over time. People are like, well, I got no luck on it. Why am I having problem? Because it's not the
Exactly.
answer to the problem.
This is still a database. We are talking to
Yeah.
developers directly here. They're the ones that are writing this. You're the ones that are tuning this. The whole nomenclature of no lock doesn't mean that you're not locking those records specifically, and therefore your code is not causing any issues because you have this wonderful hint of no lock. Still applies here. It's a database. It still applies. Developers using no lock, go research why you shouldn't do that. We can have a long conversation over that. Everybody knows I preach about it all the time. But Ginger, I love that it's on the slide.
Oh yeah. I just want to like call out, hey, if you haven't heard this before, go look that up.
So they make it easy for you to find the blocking, the queries, and they're going to get some alerts on this we talked about earlier.
Yeah. So also one thing too is like looking at allocated size, because this gets into costing. Now, one great thing now is that if you want to play around with SQL DB, you know what it's going to cost you?
Zero?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's preview, which means that you can allocate quite a lot of size. I imagine that'll change someday. What do you think?
The one thing when it comes to anything inside the cloud, you always worry about the cloud shock and cost, right? So as we're looking at all these monitoring and as we're looking at the size and trying to figure out what kind of tiers you're picking and what type of offering, there's a thing called F64. I keep hearing this all the time when it comes to Fabric. I'm still trying to figure out what the heck that is, because it sounds like, I don't even know. It sounds like a camera type or something. I don't know. I'm not there yet. So knowing these kind of pieces and the allocated size, how it's all going to play together with cost, I'm very interested in seeing. Again, this is in preview, right? So So every button that we push sometimes adds costs in the cloud. So we'll see. I'm assuming, performance is very important. Having a database and having to be able to manage the performance is going to be critical. So I'm hoping maybe it becomes a package deal. I don't know. We'll see how that all plays out. I'm interested.
Yeah, but right now, I mean, allocated size, because you're not paying for it right now, you can just up it. It tells you that your allocated size is too small, no problem. But I don't imagine that's going to be true forever. So this is something.
So that actually is giving, if you look at that second bullet point there, it's going to tell you what your largest tables are. So if you're doing some logging or something like that, and that's actually taking up your size, this is going to give us a great view into where our big consumer of that space is. So we can scale it down if the money goes up, right? Because of the size.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I know a lot of people kind of wonder how big their tables are, and this will show you, which is nice. Yep. So, and here's your favorite, automatic index.
Gosh. Yeah. We'll talk about this being my favorite. I don't know. So when it comes to indexing, I have a very passionate view on, I want really detailed indexes. I want to be able to put indexes in myself. I want to be able to really dive in on how that index is going to be the most purposeful for my environment. Now, putting my cap off as a DBA, I have to remember that this is for developers. They want to make sure that the workloads can run fast. They have automatic indexing turned on by default. My understanding is that you cannot turn it off, but it can be tracked and it can be put into source control. So there is some things. And what I like about automatic indexing, which it relates to all Azure SQL databases, is that they try to do no harm, right? Microsoft always tries to say, I will do no harm, right? So they will test an index recommendation. They will verify the index recommendation, and they will implement the index recommendation. Same thing if that is reverting the index because it didn't do what it expected to do, or if they dropped it and it causes an issue, they can put it back. So they try to give us a little bit of comfort knowing that the indexes are going to be there to help speed up our workload. And I don't have to do anything. Developers don't need to understand them. You should, but developers don't necessarily need to know how to create those indexes because it's going to monitor and do that for you now.
Yeah. But on that note, though, I mean, it never drops user created indexes. So if you look at it and you're like, you know what, forget automatic, this would fix a problem that I'm having, and you add the index and all problems are solved, you're good. It's not going to ever get rid of the indexes you create. Yours don't get dropped.
I like that. I like that because that would be a question for me. If it's going to go through and see if the usage of the index is good or not, is it going to do the ones that I've worked so hard to create? Now, I do understand because this is very different and they've got an opportunity to work on this platform as a new environment that they put more intelligence into this. So it's not the current automatic index logic type stuff that I'm used to and battle against all the time when it comes to a database performance. They've put some more stuff into it. It's been able to do things a little bit better from what I understand. I'm looking forward to seeing that, and maybe that will get trickled down into my area.
Yeah, I mean, we're always talking about this is basically Azure SQL DB. This isn't. This is a little bit of a new rev that's not something that matches Azure SQL DB automatic indexes. So if you have used automatic indexes in Azure SQL DB and said meh, give these a try. They're not exactly the same. So
I'll give it a try. Let's see how they do it.
Oops. So, of course, you brought up, what this slide's talking about, source control integration. As Hamish and Heidi told everybody in their session yesterday, source control, CI/CD, extremely important when it comes to database development.
Agreed. I like the fact that they're going to be able to integrate this piece. So if we need to, create backups, can you do backups and stuff? Yes. When we want to go ahead and do this kind of thing, it's still all incorporated in your source control, can be recreated. You can go and revert and add and see what was done for each one of these as it evolves.
Well, right, because hopefully we're not doing our testing in production. And if you do have an auto-created index in your test environment, you can say, great, this is wonderful. I see that it got added, and I definitely want to make sure that this is applied in production and it's in source control. So you could just migrate that there without having to wait for it to auto-tune it perhaps as well.
We all know the best testing is in production, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's where everybody does it.
Always happens, right? So, yes, I like it.
So, all right. Well, let's take a look at some of the remaining tabs that we have in our dashboard that are going to give us some more insight into things that we haven't yet kind of talked about, or show you some things we haven't talked about. And we talked about CPU already, and what you can do with that, and the queries you can see, and all of the different information that we see there. But let's move on to something that we haven't talked about yet, and that's user connections. So if we see here that we've got a Fabric SQL editors, 2 of those. Query Stress has got another one, and then there's a TD service authentication as well. And you can see how many different connections are made where. And we can see the one that here was pinpointed. There are 9 connections for these different ones. And we could kind of dive into that and see what the user connections are as well. We can look at the past hour, again, changing around with the time frame, looking at 24 hours, and see if we see some kind of a trend going on with this. Of course, something else we talked about, these requests per seconds. This gives us an idea of what's going on, seeing what queries are being executed at that given point in time. We're seeing that same spike we saw in user connections, which kind of makes sense that we would see. So a lot of requests per second at that particular point in time. And then, of course, we can see what got blocked. So hopefully we see something like this where there's hardly any. Hopefully none is best. We can see here, though, we had 7 block queries. So not so good, but we probably need to investigate what's going on. Currently, which is what we see at the bottom, nothing's blocked. But we could go back and take a look at what was blocked to see, what the heck went on. It's great that we see nothing's going on right now, but if we had an alert, we would see that down there. So,
and that helps me identify who wrote that code, right? So I can see the actual application and know exactly who the owner is, so I can go and get that tuned.
Right. And so allocated sizes is what we have allocated. This has got a 3 terabytes allocated right now. So we can see that we've used it. If we want to allocate more, then we would need to increase that. We don't see any problems with that. But what's just great, look, we see the table. You see the tables, and to your point you asked earlier, and we can see which one has the most usage. So we can see how many rows and the size. So both of that.
Very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the kind of thing that a lot of people would like to know. And then, of course, going into our automatic index and seeing how that works. To see what was running over time, looking at what the trend is over the last 24 hours, and then diving into some some different ones actually after that. So we've got a lot of different things. And this is all in the dashboard. You don't have to write DMVs. You can just take a look and see all this current information or time periods that you would like it to be over time.
And so they make it, you said this is pretty familiar territory and looking as the rest of the whole Fabric environment. So I think it's going to be very user friendly. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be really intimidating. Now, again, keeping in mind, this is not for DBAs, right? This is for the developers. So lower my expectations a little bit from the database piece, but they don't need to be high expectations because I only need to look at and identify where my query and my codes are going wrong. It's
right.
A different framework.
What's great though here is we can see if how many indexes got created, so we can kind of monitor, what it thinks of what we've got going on or dropped. So, and then, going back to, seeing, what we've got going on in CPU. So we've got a lot of different options that we can see inside of it.
And that actually might correlate, right? So if they add an index, my CPU may drop. Or
absolutely.
If they remove an index, maybe they had to revert it or do something because we had a spike or what have you when it comes into, looking at if there was benefit for those indexes that are coming through. You should be able to see that correlation.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up that we do have that restore option, so we can always restore a manual database so if we want a test version of it. But we don't have to worry about backups because that's not a Fabric thing that we have to care about. It just kind of happens.
They take care of it for you, right? So that's another offering when you go to things like the cloud. They actually manage that for you and make it easy, and you still get the restore capability, which gives me warm and fuzzies and allows us to get back to that source code versions if we need to or what have you. Now, I know there's a question about Copilot. Always. I have views on Copilot. We won't get into a whole Copilot discussion. I love you, Microsoft, but we have a lot to talk about. No, but it's really good for beginners when they're looking at performance and any kind of recommendations on how to tune your code. Copilot in Fabric and Azure SQL Database. What you thinking, Ginger?
Well, you know what? We could do an entire hour talk just on that as well. And that would be kind of a fun follow-up to this. But since we don't have another hour to talk about that, I think the best way for people to find out the most information at one time is there is a Microsoft Learn that the moderators have shared that shows you everything that you would want to know with Copilot, looking at what you can do with it within Azure SQL DB. So it will do code completion for you, quick actions. You can use a chat pane. And you can enable Copilot if you have an F64 or greater license inside of Fabric. So that even though this is in preview, that part of it is still the same. And just note, for those of you who are still using the Fabric trial, that'll be me, you cannot use Copilot with a trial. You do actually have to have a license. That is one of the few things that that trial won't help you do that. So. But right now, it's not making changes to the existing SQL queries in the query editor. So it understands the inputs, but it won't generate them for you. And this is something, again, it's a new product. This may change, but this is how it's working now. And also always remember, Copilot's not perfect. So
exactly. I was just going to say that. So I don't want to just drop my code in there, have it refactor it, think you're good, take it back out and drop it into production, right? You want to make sure you're testing and doing everything you need to do and learning as you go along, right? You might not be a subject matter expert on exactly how to write the best queries. It is a guide. It is a way to research. It is a way to give you what I call Scooby-Doo breadcrumbs, how to follow the mystery and figure out why your query is slow. It's a great tool for learning that, and that will come into play here. And I was just thinking, you keep saying F64, X64. Now I know what it's reminding me of. I'm getting a whole Top Gun reference or something with an F-16,
yeah.
I'm hearing airplane.
Yeah. You can definitely do an F-16, but if you have an F-16, you're not doing Copilot.
Right. Oh, yeah. See, I want to go 64. So I don't even know all the names of it. I've seen Top Gun Maverick way too many times.
Yeah.
So I know a few of the F things, but now I've got to learn a whole different genre on what each one of these capacities, is that what it's called? Offerings are, and what I'll have for the database here.
Well, it's just gotten trickier too, because for people who have used for Power BI users, the functional equivalent for an F64 is a P1. And
Okay.
those are, you cannot buy them after July 1st, 2024. And they are going to be phasing them out the 31st of 2024. Now, if you have a 3-year T1, that's still available, but the Microsoft is looking to convert those at some point to F64, which is not something that we are going to be doing. So just wanted to actually do the recap of all of the great stuff that we have doing since we've talked to about all the some different questions that we've gotten. Oh, one other question that we got before we're going to recap, Mona. Do you want to take the one about schemas?
Oh, we have a database topic. What are the pros and cons of using schemas for objects instead of using DBO? That is a very database developer conversation that we can talk about. To me, a lot of the schemas are all about organizing the information, changing the security that's involved in that, and how you've written your app, right? There's a lot of scalability and a lot of refinement you can do using things like schemas. We would have to talk about that in a real developer. Ginger and I might be able to give you two different thoughts on process on how to do it from the data warehouse side to the transactional side that I'm used to. But we'll hold that question for another time. That's a deep dive, but it's still applicable here because we're still talking about database design.
Yeah, with TLDR though, would you say that using something other than DBO is good?
It depends.
Okay, there you go. Classic consultant answer. So there you go.
Exactly.
Well, let's take a look at, let's talk a little bit about the previous ones that we hope that everybody else has seen.
Let's see.
What about the first one? That one was quite interesting about the overview of this whole environment.
Yeah, this is where, I think my DBA cap did not come off and blockage of the word fabric until probably episode 3, because I'm thinking I have to get into fabric. I keep hearing this word fabric and I'm a DBA, right? There's a database involved in this whole ecosystem. What is in it for me? Where is my buy-in? How can I understand this? Watching the first episode 1 was a good start. It kind of gave me, okay, maybe there's a tidbit of something that I need to do. Episode 2, we've seen data flows and notebooks. My brain kind of shuts off because, that's not my DBA world. Then we get into episode 3. Episode 3 was really good about explaining the vectors and the Gen AI, which I'm hearing a lot, and the new stuff that's coming with that. So that was pretty exciting for me. What do you think about the other ones?
So that's one thing we'll say about Gen A and vector databases. There's so much potential that I think that people should keep watch on that in 2025, because I think that you're going to find more and more ways to use that. And that brings us to GraphQL, which is just really, really interesting for how easy that makes application development work. And I watched that one. I really enjoyed the review of it. Joey kind of went kind of deep dive. I saw the one that he did where he was talking about how it works differently. Of course, lifecycle management that just got released on the 10th. So it's great. Of course, you have to have that with databases, right, Monica?
That's the one that I skipped. I haven't seen yet. Luckily, it's recorded. I can go back and watch it. And I'm going to read the blog first, and then I'm going to go back and watch it so I can pick up what they all had to say about it. But I think it's great at this point in time of this product, which is pretty new. They've incorporated this right off the bat. So
a lot of people think they can get away without having anything in their database and source control, and that's just a problem.
It's crazy. Restoring an object is not a fun thing to do. Keeping a source control where you can revert things or what have you. Oh yeah, you really need it, and they have it right off the bat. So that's great. And then, of course, ours. We were able to talk about the performance, the dashboard, and everything that was actually incorporated already. We all know it's a new product, and it's a good start. Do you think your users are going to be comfortable with everything that they've got so far?
Yeah, and I really think that the performance dashboard really gives you an idea of what's going on. Because if you're like using a tool, you're like, how's it doing? Yeah. And you won't know unless you look at the dashboard. It makes it so easy to find stuff. It's not... And everybody who's using the database can see what's going on. So it's not like it's limited to DBAs with knowledge. Anybody doing a query inside of the SQL database will see, hey, look, there's an alert. And so I think it's really kind of raises the importance of performance to anybody,
And
which I think is a nice
yeah,
tool.
yeah, I like that they're giving you just enough. Sometimes when you give developers, analysts, or anybody who's not a subject matter expert in the real deep meat of the engine, you give them just enough to get on that trail and solve the mystery, right? About their query and what's in it for them. Sometimes when you give them a ton of information, it's overkill, right? So now they start going down these rabbit holes and this other mystery that has nothing to do with their things. This really gives us what we need, allows us to track our work with that lovely star. I love that. Whoever came up with that, just starring it and keeping it in the front. What matters to them, right? What matters to you? And again, developer, developer, developer. And us DBAs, we've got to get into it and, you know, take a partial hat and work with all this. Yeah.
But it's great to see, like, if you've gotten an alert, and if maybe you modified a query to perform better, you can instantly see, hey, look, it's working well, or it made things worse. Which is great that you can see that without even having to do, which is great for developers who may not are really, I don't know anything about execution plans, but they know red dots bad. So, all right. Well, this is the dates that all of those things happened. And just also wanted to make sure to talk about the next big Fabricon in Vegas.
That's right. Again, we're talking databases now. Fabric conference. It's not just for data analysts and scientists and BI folks that are in the Fabric world now. Us DBAs are in the Fabric world. There is a database track, and I can go there as a DBA and still learn where my relevance is, what my piece is inside this Fabric community. And those that aren't familiar with databases as much, that are still in charge of the Fabric environment, need to learn the database side. So they're going to bring us all together in Vegas in March. And they're going to save us $150 now if we use that code.
Yeah. Well, the one thing is that, we're talking about SQL DB, and I guarantee you that between now and March, there's going to be some more content that will be really interesting to see that they'll have at in the Fabricon conference, because it's definitely going to be a tool that Microsoft is going to be telling us more and more about. And by the time we get to May, who knows, we may have some different features that we might be able to talk about at that time. If we go there, the latest and greatest stuff we'll find out for sure.
Absolutely. And us DBA folks have got to be along for the ride. Ginger, you're going to be pulling us. I was kicking and screaming in the beginning, but now I'm there. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and think about, AI is moving by leaps and bounds. And so I'm sure that there'll be some more things that'll be there for those of you who are looking to co-pilot all the things. So there you go.
Co-pilot all the things. Co-pilot. Right? Not
exactly. Pilot. Not autopilot. Yeah.
Not autopilot. Right?
Monica, I just really enjoyed the chance to visit with you again. It's always fun. We've known each other for a while. It's always great to talk to you, and especially about some new stuff like this.
I know. I love the compare and contrast, because my brain it's different, and it really gives me insight to your world and where my role is coming forward, because the DBA world is ever evolving. So thanks for bringing me along today. I truly appreciate all your insights and you dealing with all my questions.
Same. Yeah, because everybody needs to know how to do more performance monitoring, and that's your world. So this is great to get your perspective as well.
Thanks, Ginger. And thanks, Microsoft, for presenting this opportunity to all of us.
Absolutely.
The Reactor series is great for not only us to learn, but everybody who is following along and learning it as we go.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, Monica.
Bye. See you later, Ginger.
See ya.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.